This is CBS News Special Report. I'm Carissa Lawson in New York.
In the vast and unpredictable waters of the Caribbean, a high-stakes military encounter unfolded, revealing the staggering power of modern naval forces. The target? The American aircraft carrier Gerald R. Ford, a symbol of naval supremacy. The attackers? Venezuelan forces, confident in their strategy and armed with advanced fighter jets, aiming to strike a devastating blow. But the outcome of this operation would prove to be a harsh lesson in the limits of traditional tactics against the cutting-edge technology of the United States Navy. The Venezuelan plan was audacious. With 8 fighter jets on standby, they hoped to close the gap on the American carrier and launch a surprise attack, relying on high-speed missiles to cripple one of the most advanced warships in the world. But there was one major flaw. The American aircraft carrier was not alone. Surrounding it were 3 powerful Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, equipped with state-of-the-art anti-aircraft systems. 2 advanced E-2D Hawkeye surveillance planes were already in the air, monitoring the skies for any sign of aggression. And if that wasn't enough, a squadron of 16 Super Hornet fighter jets were ready to engage at a moment's notice. As the Venezuelan jets made their move, the Gerald R. Ford and its escort ships sprang into action. It would take mere minutes for the American forces to detect and counter the threat. The Venezuelan pilots, confident in their precision strikes, soon found themselves outmatched by an adversary that could process and respond to threats in real time. With radar systems scanning the skies, every move they made was tracked. Every attempt to close the distance was met with overwhelming technological superiority. Within moments of the initial engagement, 6 Venezuelan fighters were destroyed, their pilots ejected into the sea. As the American aircraft surged into the skies, the Venezuelan forces quickly realized that their missiles were no match for the defenses of the Gerald R. Ford. The Venezuelan assault, meant to be a bold strike, had turned into an unmitigated disaster. But the destruction didn't end there. As 2 more Venezuelan fighters attempted to flee the battle, they were hunted down by American missiles, obliterating any hope of retreat. What followed was a well-coordinated search and rescue operation, as U.S. helicopters scoured the waters for the downed pilots. Within an hour and a half, the survivors were recovered, but the price for Venezuela was steep. Millions of dollars in aircraft, lost pilots, and most importantly, a shattered sense of military confidence. The entire attack lasted just over 4 minutes, an overwhelming display of how modern naval warfare, with its integrated systems and technological superiority, renders traditional tactics almost obsolete. What had begun as a bold challenge to the might of the United States Navy ended in a humiliating defeat, exposing a painful truth. In today's military landscape, asymmetrical tactics are no match for technological dominance. But what lessons did Venezuela learn from this costly failure? And what does this mean for the future of naval combat? Stay tuned as we dive deeper into the details of this explosive clash and uncover the lessons that resonate far beyond the Caribbean. In the heart of the Caribbean, where vast stretches of blue meet the horizon, a powerful American force quietly navigated its way through international waters. The aircraft carrier Gerald R. Ford, one of the most advanced warships in the world, sailed confidently through the region, its imposing presence a testament to the might of the United States Navy. This floating fortress, equipped with cutting-edge technology and weapons systems, was a critical asset in America's global defense strategy. Yet, as it moved through these familiar waters, a storm was brewing on the horizon. Venezuela, under the leadership of President Maduro, had long viewed the growing American military presence in the Caribbean with suspicion and hostility. The country, grappling with its own internal political and economic crises, was eager to assert itself on the world stage, hoping to challenge the might of the United States. Venezuela's military, despite facing international sanctions and resource shortages, had invested heavily in modernizing its forces, focusing on asymmetric warfare tactics to offset the technological gap with its powerful adversaries. One of its key strategies involved the use of advanced fighter jets and surface-to-air missiles, a combination they hoped would be sufficient to breach the formidable defenses of an American carrier strike group. The plan was audacious. launch a surprise attack against the Gerald R. Ford, and cripple it before the American forces could mount a defense. The Venezuelan military had learned from previous incidents involving U.S. naval forces, where the overwhelming technological advantage of the American fleet had made direct confrontations futile. Instead, they decided to rely on speed and surprise. 8 of their most capable fighter jets, Su-30 Mk2 and F-16s, would launch from a base on the Venezuelan coast, hoping to close the distance to the American carrier and fire long-range missiles before the Ford's defenses could react. What the Venezuelan forces did not know was that the U.S. Navy was prepared for this exact type of confrontation. The Gerald R. Ford wasn't just a lone ship in the water. It was the centerpiece of a powerful strike group designed to withstand and respond to any threat. Surrounding the aircraft carrier were 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, each equipped with the latest in missile defense technology, including the SM-2 and SM-6 anti-aircraft missiles. These destroyers formed a protective ring around the carrier, their radar systems constantly scanning the skies for any sign of an incoming threat. On board the Ford itself was an array of sensors and countermeasures, from advanced radar to electronic warfare systems capable of jamming enemy signals and disrupting their targeting systems. But the greatest advantage of all lay in the skies above. 2 E-2D Advanced Hawkeye early warning aircraft were already in the air, their powerful radar systems capable of detecting airborne threats from over 300 miles away. With their ability to track and identify multiple targets at once, these aircraft could provide real-time information to the fleet and direct fighter jets into position long before the Venezuelan attackers could even think about launching their missiles. As the Venezuelan jets made their approach, unaware of the full extent of the American defensive umbrella, the first signs of trouble emerged. The E-2D Hawkeye had already detected the formation of 8 Venezuelan fighters at a range of 140 nautical miles. The American radar systems locked onto the incoming threat, and within minutes, the U.S. Navy's response was in motion. The captain of the Gerald R. Ford, Jennifer Rodriguez, issued the order for a full combat alert. 16 FA-18E Super Hornet fighter jets, stationed on the carrier, were immediately launched into the sky. With their powerful radar systems and air-to-air missiles, these jets were more than capable of neutralizing the threat posed by the Venezuelan planes. As the Venezuelan jets continued their approach, they were unaware that their every move was being tracked by the American systems. The U.S. Navy had already identified the exact flight paths of each jet, and the Super Hornets were quickly positioned to intercept them. The U.S. Navy's response was swift and precise. Within moments of being detected, the Venezuelan fighters were already outmatched. The technology gap had already sealed their fate. What the Venezuelan pilots thought would be a surprise strike had turned into a race against time, and they were already several steps behind. The Venezuelan force had been devastated within minutes, but the battle wasn't over yet. While the skies were clear of enemy jets, the stakes were higher than ever for both sides. On board the Gerald R. Ford, Captain Jennifer Rodriguez knew the mission was far from complete. Despite the swift and overwhelming defeat of the Venezuelan attack, there was still the matter of recovering the downed pilots in the water. What followed was a highly coordinated search and rescue operation that would demonstrate the precision and teamwork that had been honed over years of naval training. The moment the last Venezuelan jet was destroyed, the U.S. Navy's focus shifted from combat to humanitarian aid. The command center quickly initiated a rescue mission, knowing that every second counted. While the Ford and its escort ships continued to maintain their defensive postures, the USS Gettysburg, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser, was tasked with deploying the search and rescue helicopters. 2 MH-60 Seahawk helicopters were launched from the Gettysburg, their rotor blades cutting through the air as they made their way toward the last known coordinates of the downed Venezuelan pilots. The situation was complicated by the fact that the pilots were scattered across a large stretch of water, each drifting in different directions, and the ocean itself was not exactly calm. Strong waves and unpredictable currents made the rescue mission far more challenging than it would have been in calm seas. As the helicopters flew out to the scene, They relied on the emergency beacons activated by the Venezuelan pilots when they ejected from their jets. The emergency signals emitted on 240 MHz and 30 MHz frequencies were picked up by the search and rescue teams, guiding them to the approximate location of each pilot. But the unpredictable sea conditions and the distance between each pilot meant that time was quickly slipping away. The helicopters were at maximum range, and with each passing minute, the chances of finding all 8 pilots decreased. The intense pressure of recovering the downed airmen added a layer of complexity to the already high-stakes situation. For the next 96 minutes, the helicopters scoured the water, relying on infrared cameras and trained observers to pick out the faintest signs of life amidst the vast expanse of the Caribbean. The tension was palpable. Each new discovery brought a glimmer of hope, while the long stretches of empty ocean between each pilot were a stark reminder of how fragile the situation was. The U.S. Navy's extensive training in search and rescue operations, however, proved invaluable. Despite the odds, the helicopter crews were able to locate and recover all 8 Venezuelan pilots, who were hoisted from the water one by one. None of them were seriously injured, though all were undoubtedly shaken by the harrowing experience of ejecting from their aircraft and drifting in the open sea for nearly an hour and a half. With the pilots safely on board, the operation shifted to one of containment and diplomacy. The Gettysburg escorted the rescued pilots back to Venezuelan territory, where they would be handed over to the Venezuelan Navy. The U.S. Navy's professionalism in carrying out the mission, despite the successful interception and destruction of the Venezuelan force, was a powerful demonstration of the humanitarian side of military operations. However, the overall outcome of the mission could not be denied. Venezuela had lost 6 of its most advanced Su-30 Mk2 fighters and 2 F-16s, along with the pilots who had been involved in the attack. In the aftermath of the skirmish, the cost of the failed mission weighed heavily on the Venezuelan military. The loss of the Su-30 Mk2s, each valued at $60 million, represented a staggering blow to the country's already overstretched defense budget. The 2 F-16s, though less expensive at $20 million each, were nonetheless critical to Venezuela's Air Force capabilities. These aircraft were some of the most advanced in their fleet, and their loss would further limit the country's ability to respond to future threats. The total cost of the operation, including the lost aircraft, the weapons, the training of the pilots, and the opportunity costs associated with such a high-profile failure, was estimated to be over $500 million. The Venezuelan government was already facing severe economic challenges, and the loss of these aircraft only deepened the strain. In addition to the material losses, the emotional and political fallout was far-reaching. President Maduro had hoped that the attack on the Gerald R. Ford would signal a new era of assertiveness on the global stage, positioning Venezuela as a formidable player in the world of international military affairs. Instead, the failed operation served to highlight just how outmatched the Venezuelan military was when confronted with modern, technologically superior forces. The government's ability to maintain its credibility and military deterrence would be severely undermined by the loss of such expensive and high-profile assets. Meanwhile, the U.S. Navy had shown the world a clear demonstration of why modern aircraft carrier strike groups were almost untouchable by conventional means. The Gerald R. Ford's defensive capabilities, bolstered by its Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and E-2D Hawkeye early warning aircraft, proved to be more than enough to neutralize the Venezuelan threat. In fact, the entire engagement was over before the Venezuelan aircraft had even reached the critical range to launch their missiles. The technological gap between the two forces had been starkly apparent, and the outcome had been decided long before the first missile was fired. As the Ford and its strike group continued their mission in the Caribbean, the U.S. Navy's reputation as the most powerful and technologically advanced naval force in the world was only further solidified. The financial cost of the American operation, while substantial, was negligible compared to the losses sustained by Venezuela. The 20 AMDRA missiles fired by the U.S. Navy, at a cost of $1.79 million each, amounted to roughly $35.8 million. The fuel used by the 16 Super Hornets was another significant cost, but in comparison to the loss of advanced Venezuelan aircraft, it paled in significance. The most remarkable part of the entire engagement was the speed and precision with which the U.S. Navy had neutralized the Venezuelan threat, all while minimizing their own losses and demonstrating the vast superiority of their technology. While the rescue of the Venezuelan pilots was a rare moment of diplomacy, the overall mission underscored a central truth. In the modern era of naval warfare, technological superiority can render even the most daring attacks obsolete. The Venezuelan military had made an attempt to challenge one of the most formidable naval forces in the world, but their failure was a reminder of how easily advanced systems and real-time data processing could shift the balance of power in combat. The event served as a powerful lesson for all involved, highlighting the incredible costs of such an operation and reinforcing the belief that asymmetric tactics were no match for technological prowess. The outcome of the failed Venezuelan attack on the Gerald R. Ford sent shockwaves throughout the military world. Despite the quick and overwhelming response of the U.S. Navy, the entire event underscored a sobering reality for many nations. The technological gap in modern warfare is vast, and the costs of attempting to challenge it can be catastrophic. In the aftermath, several key lessons emerged, not just for Venezuela, but for all countries that might consider taking on the might of a modern U.S. Navy strike group. For Venezuela, the most immediate lesson was one of overwhelming technological disparity. While the country had invested in modernizing its military, including the acquisition of advanced fighters and missile systems, their capabilities were clearly insufficient to challenge the most advanced naval forces in the world. The failed operation had laid bare the limitations of conventional tactics when faced with a fleet equipped with real-time integrated sensor networks, advanced radar systems, and precise missile defense technology. The U.S. Navy's ability to detect, track, and neutralize the Venezuelan threat from miles away had rendered traditional tactics such as surprise missile strikes and high-speed engagements utterly ineffective. The Venezuelan government now had to confront the grim reality that, in the modern era, military power is not just about numbers or individual weapon systems. It is about how all elements of a force work together in a highly coordinated, networked environment. In the days following the attack, military analysts and strategists began to assess the broader implications of the failed operation. Many noted that Venezuela had underestimated the scale of the technological challenge they were up against. Their reliance on asymmetric tactics, such as using fast, long-range missiles fired from stealthy fighter jets, was no match for the high-tech integrated systems of the U.S. Navy. The fleet's ability to process data from multiple sources simultaneously and its rapid decision-making capabilities had allowed it to neutralize the threat with stunning speed and precision. This highlighted a critical shift in warfare. Success now hinged less on individual prowess or surprise, and more on the ability to leverage a vast network of sensors, communications, and automated systems. For the U.S. Navy, the engagement reaffirmed the effectiveness of their aircraft carrier strike groups in a world increasingly dominated by advanced technologies. The ability to detect an incoming threat from over 140 miles away and then respond with a multi-layered defense involving destroyers, early warning aircraft, and fighter jets showed just how formidable these groups were. Yet even with this victory, the U.S. Navy was reminded of the evolving nature of global security.